right, let's jump right in. Today, we're taking a look at the incredible world of modern agriculture, and specifically, where age-old wisdom and brand new science are colliding. We're going to see how everything from satellites way up in space, right down to the tiny microbes in a handful of soil all works together. It's really a journey from the macro to the micro. When you think about farming, you probably picture something like that image on the left, the classic, timeless plow. And for most of human history, that was pretty much the story. But today, the reality looks a whole lot more like the image on the right. We're talking drones, we're talking AI, we're talking bioengineering. Our job here is to connect those two worlds and see how they're merging to create the future of food. So first things first, let's break down this modern transformation. To really get it, we need to start with the big picture, the huge economic and information systems that surround every single farm, before we zoom all the way down to the ground beneath our feet. Okay, let's start with the economic macro system. See, every single thing that's grown on a farm fits into what's called a value chain. It starts with a basic cost to produce it, right? But then value gets added at every single step along the way: handling, processing, distribution. So for a modern farmer, the big insight is this. If you understand the entire chain, you can see exactly where value is created or lost, and that empowers you to capture more of it. Now, beyond the economics, the biggest wild card in farming has always been the weather. It's totally unpredictable, and it can literally make or break an entire season. So let's take a look at the view from above and see how massive predictive data is helping farmers manage that risk. And here is that information ecosystem in action. It all kicks off with raw satellite data from an agency like the IMD. But here's the thing, raw data isn't really that useful on its own. That's why services like AIS are so critical. They're the translators. They turn all that complex data into simple, actionable advice. Then, platforms like GKMS deliver that advice, customized for your local area, straight to a farmer's phone. It's a complete pipeline, from outer space right down to the soil. So why is a data pipeline like that so important? Well, just take a look at this case study from Ladakh. The challenges here are just immense. The growing season is incredibly short. Rain is a total gamble. It's either floods or droughts. And the temperature swings are wild, from 30 degrees Celsius in the summer all the way down to -25 in the winter. In an environment this tough, a precise weather forecast isn't just a nice to have, it's an absolute lifeline. But look, that big national-level data is only half the picture. What's happening in the unique microclimate of one specific field is just as important. And this is where that beautiful blend of tradition and science really starts to shine. Farmers can build their own micro-observatories using these brilliant, super simple DIY instruments to get hyper-local data on rainfall, wind direction, and, this one's my favorite, the humidity in the air. Right. That psychrometer on the right. It looks almost too simple, doesn't it? So how on earth can two basic thermometers and a little piece of wet cloth give you a precise reading that helps you predict what your plants will need? Well, here's the invisible mechanic at work. It all comes down to the basic physics of evaporation. See, as water evaporates from the wet cloth, it pulls heat away from the thermometer bulb, which makes its temperature reading drop. The difference in temperature between the dry thermometer and the wet one tells you exactly how humid the air is. The bigger the gap, the drier the air. It's this elegant, simple engine that turns a basic observation into incredibly powerful data. Okay, so we've covered the sky, both from a satellite's perspective and from right there in the field. Now, let's zoom in even closer and get our hands dirty, because everything, and I mean everything, starts with the soil. And believe me, it is so much more than just dirt. I absolutely love this analogy. Think of soil health like a temple, held up by three crucial pillars. First, you've got the physical stuff, like its texture, which determines how well roots can grow. Then you have the chemical pillar. That's the pH and nutrient levels, which is literally the plant's food. And finally, the biological pillar. That's the living engine of microbes and worms that make it all work. And the main takeaway is written right there at the bottom. Without testing all three pillars, you're not farming, you're just guessing. But of course, getting good data from a test means you have to collect a good sample in the first place. You can't just go out and grab a random scoop of dirt. To get a sample that truly represents the whole field, you have to follow a strict protocol, walking in a specific zigzag pattern, clearing the surface, and taking a nice uniform core. It's that kind of rigor that makes the final lab result actually mean something. So, we've analyzed our soil. Now let's zoom in one final time to the most microscopic level yet, the very beginning of a plant's life, the seed. Think of it as life's hidden blueprint. The quality of that blueprint determines everything that comes after. So how do you possibly know if a seed is good or bad? Well, the real secrets are locked inside. And this is an absolutely brilliant, low-tech method called brine density sorting. You actually start with plain water, and you'd be surprised, even then, some of the weakest seeds will sink. But the real trick is to add a very specific amount of salt, which makes the water denser than normal. And this is the payoff. In that super dense salt water, only the absolute best, healthiest seeds, the ones that are packed with dense, nutrient-rich embryos, only they have enough mass to sink to the bottom. All the floaters get skimmed off and discarded. They're the ones that are hollow, damaged, or infected. It's such a simple, elegant way to make sure you're only planting seeds with the highest possible chance of success. Okay, so we've tested our soil and we've selected the perfect seeds. Now, how are we going to feed the crop? Let's look at how farmers are closing the loop, using these traditional organic methods that are, when you break them down, really just applied science. This is a perfect picture of what we call an organic nutrient engine. It's a completely self-sustaining cycle. You take inputs like agro waste and cow dung, you combine them in a controlled way, and you let the microbes do their thing. In just 6 days, that waste is transformed into incredibly rich vermicompost, ready to go right back into the soil. It's basically nature's ultimate recycling program. And what about defense against pests? This is Dashaparni arca, a traditional biopesticide. But I want you to look at how precise this is. This isn't just a random stew of plants. It's a specific biochemical recipe. You need exact amounts of active botanicals. You need cow dung as a catalyst, and cow urine as a solvent, all of it fermented for a very specific amount of time to create a powerful, natural defense. Okay, let's take a deep breath. We've gone from satellites all the way down to soil microbes. Now it's time to zoom back out and see how all these different pieces, the big and the small, all fit together to create one successful system. And this diagram just lays it all out perfectly. At the very center, that's our goal, a healthy, high-yield crop. Now that crop is supported from below by all the micro-interventions we just talked about, the tested soil, the sorted seeds, the organic fertilizers, and at the same time it's protected from above by macro-awareness, things like climate forecasting and understanding that economic value chain. You see how every single part supports all the others? This quote really just wraps it all up, doesn't it? A farmer's economic success, which we started with at the top of the value chain, isn't just about big tractors and combines. It is directly determined by the scientific discipline applied to the tiniest seed and the invisible world of microbes right from the very start. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. We've seen how simple, traditional things like salt water and wet cloths contain these powerful scientific principles. So if the future of how we feed ourselves really does depend on this blend of ancient wisdom and modern data, it just makes you wonder, what other invisible mechanics are out there, hidden in old practices, just waiting for us to rediscover them?